If you follow me on social media, you've probably already seen me post a few pictures and videos of these new Base4 microphone stands. The company's been out for at least a year at this point, but I think they're just getting to the point where they're officially kind of doing a bigger release and starting to really produce these on a larger scale. It's still pretty much a one-man shop. I've talked to Todd a few times on the phone. He was very gracious to send in a few stands to check out because he makes everything. We've got the Shorty, we've got the Solo, and then we've got the Sidekick. So that's kind of the middle ground. This is a smaller one. This is the kind of normal size that you'd use for vocals, or you could even use this for drum overheads. I'm going to give it a try, but he also makes a much larger one called the Big Tree. I don't have that one here because I think I'm kind of squared away on larger stands. I've kind of felt like there's a hole in the market, especially for high quality, smaller stands like the Shorty. So I was really interested in that one. I think this is a good middle ground. And then, this is going to be more than big enough for me to do, even overheads. We'll see how that goes. But if you're really looking to do some crazier things, they do make the Big Tree. But I've got pretty much everything they make here at this point. You've got extension arms that you've seen a couple of other companies do as well, which I think it's a great system for just quickly adding on other mics and doing some weird things. We're going to try this around a drum set, try to use as few stands as possible. They're really lightweight. It's all aluminum based, and so we're going to talk about that and why that's a good system for getting really secure fits when you're moving all this stuff around and locking them down. Really light, but very, very sturdy. Base4, they get their name from the bass, the 4 legs. We'll talk about that as well. But at this point, I think I just want everyone to see kind of the lineup. Again, I think the other cool thing about these is that they're really, really modular. The system was really clever. You can almost build them like Legos and do a bunch of things. So I think a lot of that's pretty self-explanatory just looking at it, but I'm going to show you a few other things that you probably haven't thought of because I feel like I've got a pretty good handle on how to work these and what I think about them at this point, but even after using these for a week or so and talking back and forth with Todd, the owner, lots of really cool things that I still haven't discovered, and even after doing this video, I'll probably be like, man, I still miss some stuff, so... Anyway, I really like supporting smaller companies like this that are just starting out and really thinking outside the box because mic stands are one of those things that have been done the same way for so long that I think the initial kind of thing that we're all going to have to get around is just a little bit of a learning curve and just getting used to using a stand that's designed a little bit differently. But I think they're onto something. After using these for about a week, I've got my head around them completely. And, a lot of problems that I hear a lot of people, bringing up for good measure on forums and stuff. I think it's just going to be a matter of you actually getting your hands on these and using them for a little bit. So most of the reviews I do, it's on microphones or something where I can just play a bunch of audio samples for you and you can make up your own mind. I'm going to have to get a little more opinionated with these and kind of just because you can watch me do things. That's a totally different thing than, me giving you direct feedback about what I think of these and, how they feel in the room, how they function, because it's not a microphone. I can't just, show you how this sounds and let you make up your own decision. So I'll probably just go through some technical things about it so we can get over the learning curve, learn some things about them, why I think some of the decisions that they've made are really good, although they're different, and then just show you a bunch of different setups and some cool things so you can kind of really appreciate how modular and, how many things you can do with these just as simple problem solvers and keeping things organized and keeping your microphone safe, which is the biggest thing with stands. So let's go ahead and start and just take one of these apart, look how you assemble them, how they work, and then I'll show you some other setups. We'll go from there. I feel like I'm in kindergarten again, sitting cross-legged on the floor. Maybe we'll have nap time and snack time later. That would be really awesome right now. So there's a few things I just want to go over, basic things of what to expect when you get the stands, how to get the legs on them when you first get them. How the securing system works, it's two independent things that we just need to go over real quick so you understand how this all functions correctly so that you can get mics on and off the stands and make sure they're secured safely. And there's a lot more in-depth videos on the Base4 website if you really want to get into it, but I'm just going to cover some basics. Go to the Base4 website to learn more. When you first get the stands, you'll just have the neck with the 4 legs off the stands already. All you need to do to secure the legs to the neck is just screw them on with an included tool. So when you look at the neck, you'll see that there's an L and an S or an S, an L or an S next to all the slots. That's basically indicating your long legs and your short legs. So long legs go on the L slots, short legs go on the S slots. So let's go ahead and get a long leg on there. So we'll take them, slide the long leg down one of the slots, and I'll turn it this way so you can see it. Take the included tool and just screw on the long leg to the long slot. Same thing with the short slot. Slide it down. Make sure that it's all the way down so that the stand's level. Take the included tool, screw down, and you're good to go. Probably take you a minute. Not very difficult. Now your stand's assembled, and if for whatever reason you need to travel with these and break them down, you can. They can include bags with these, but for me, now that that's assembled, that's probably the last time I'll ever do this. One other thing I'll just point out for all the OCD people out there, on some of the legs, there is a patent number written on the bottom. Make sure that that's face down. If you assemble the stands with that face up, it's probably going to bother you, some of you. It bothered me. I did it on one of them when I did the first assembly. So just make sure that that patent number is on the bottom. And everything will look pretty. Now, as far as the securing system works, the only thing you need to know is that this is kind of two independent adjustment systems kind of working together to secure. So you've got the part for the ball system and you've got the clip up here. And they kind of work together, which I'll show you in a minute. Now, I didn't realize this until I talked to Todd at Base4, but what separates these from other similar stands with ball systems that I've used is that on the Base4 stands, it's actually aluminum on aluminum. And the reason that's important is because unlike steel, when you have aluminum on aluminum, aluminum kind of sticks to itself when it starts to compress a little bit and you secure it. So it doesn't really take much force to really get those secure and get it a lot more secure than like steel, because if it's steel on steel, and I've experienced this with some other stands, steel kind of has a tendency to kind of just still kind of roll around in there even when you secure it really well. I think they're onto something with this whole aluminum system. And when I first got these, I took my 10-pound vintage RCA PB90 ribbon microphone, which you'll see in a minute. I put it on this stand, I secured it, I left it for 24 hours, and it hadn't moved a millimeter. And then just for the hell of it, I ended up just leaving it on there for 2 more days. Same thing. It didn't move. At that point, I was a believer. So that aluminum on aluminum is a real thing. That's what sets these apart. Gives you a really secure fit because it kind of sticks to itself. Now, to get an arm on the stand, you have to loosen the clip and that part. Again, it's two independent adjustment points kind of working together. You take your slot and you slide it in up here, and you see you have to make sure that they're both loose or the slot won't fit. So now that they're both loose, I'm going to secure that point, and I'm going to secure this point, and then you're good to go. You're on there. That is secure. One of the things that I've seen a lot of people ask questions about, though, is once you get to this point, because of how this works with the slots, you can't really rotate that arm like you can a traditional stand. So how are you supposed to thread microphones onto the end of this easily when this doesn't rotate? I think the easiest solution for most people is just to buy some quick releases on these. There's lots of them on the market. That's a good, easy solution. I'm not a huge fan of quick releases, and so what I do and what Base4 recommends on all these is just you have to remember, because there's a little bit of a learning curve, that you can easily take those two out and just remove the arms on all these. Because once you have the arms out, just take your mic. Here's my Vanguard V13 with their crazy good shark mounts. Just take your arm out and you thread it onto the mic. And then the other thing is that all the Base4 stands come with these jam nuts on the end. So that's a really good feature, because when you get this threaded on there, you're going to want to go all the way as far as you can. Then back off probably one turn so it's still a little loose on there. Take your stand, line up with the thread. I usually secure this one first, which is hard to do. I'm a lefty. So you secure here, and then you secure here, and you are good to go. One final check there. That mic is in there. And then you get the mic kind of lined up where you want it. And then you use that jam nut to do the final thread to get it there. And you are on there. That mic is secure. It is not going anywhere. And again, when you're ready to take the mic off, all you have to do is just grab it, loosen here, and take it right off. Then you just take your mic off. I think a lot of people just, this is one of those things where, once you get the stands in the room, in your studio, it's pretty self-explanatory. You just, a little bit of a learning curve just to understand. It's really simple just to take those arms right off, get your mic threaded, and throw it back on. One other thing I wanted to point out is that all these extra arm accessories work the exact same way. And so you get those loose. Now, when they're both loose like this, you can put this on and get it right on a slot. And then it's really easy to slide it up and down and get your position set. And again, kind of that two-step process where you secure here, you secure here, and then that is on there. That's not going anywhere. One of the other questions that I've seen a lot of people ask, and again, this is one of those things that sometimes it doesn't make sense when you're just looking at it, but when you get it in the room and you start messing with them, it makes a lot more sense. But since the extension arms all have, you can buy them at different fixed lengths, but you can't really move them in and out. It's all different lengths that are fixed. How are you supposed to get that to things that are further or closer away when this is fixed? And again, because this is on a slot that goes all the way up and down the stand, if you have something like right here that you need to mic, all you have to do is move this further down the slot, and that's how you kind of adjust your height for everything. And again, that's just one of those things that doesn't make a lot of sense until you get it in the room and you actually use it. After a few times, you're like, oh, that makes perfect sense. That was easy. The other thing, don't forget, again, these things are like Legos. They're so modular. You also have slots on all the legs as well to where you can put these extra arms. So don't forget about that. That's really great for, getting under things like snare drums. Really cool modular system. The other thing that they sell accessory-wise is these stub mounts, which are great. They just slot on. That can be really great in some situations for the neck. But the coolest thing about the stub mounts is that on your arms, you can actually take two of them and mount them on the slots and actually turn any of the arms into a stereo bar, or, mount as many mics as you can jam on an arm. So again, I think the stub mounts are about $30 each. They're not too expensive. They come with the jam nuts as well. That's just another way to get a lot more modular with these. I think that covers the basics of the stand and just how to use them. Again, just understanding that you've got these two independent points that work together. That's really important to make sure you're securing your mics well and really getting the most out of these. Little bit of a learning curve, but it's only going to take you a day or two. That's about what it took me. So from here, let's just go ahead and start seeing these in some real world situations and kind of explore all the different things you can do with the Base4 stands. Hey, Dusty, you want a lunchtime treat? You want a lunchtime treat, buddy? Is it snack time? You go eat this? Oh, you're such a good boy. Here you go. All right, enjoy. I think it's snack time for me, too. All right, let's go through a couple of like real world hypothetical scenarios and just do some fun things with the stands and see how they hold up. So this is my infamous RCA PB90 10-pound beast. It was already a heavy mic on its own. Then it's got this unique kind of cinema mount that's pure steel that probably adds another 2 pounds. So around 10 pounds at this point. Like I said, if I can do it with this stand, with this mic, it will work on any of your mics, any pair of your mics, and probably any 3 of your mics that you throw on here. So this would be a typical starting point for acoustic guitar if you're sitting here playing. So let's say we've got an acoustic guitar player in the studio today. We're just going to do overdubs. So I kind of set this up. You'll see that I've got this set up between the X pattern and not over one of the long arms. If you kind of look down at the bottom of the stand where the X's end, as long as you keep a mic kind of inside of this sweet zone right in here, I think you're going to be fine. You're not going to have to worry about tipping. This feels really sturdy to me. If you start going past that line on the X's, especially with a heavier mic like this, I would probably recommend you just rotate the stand and just have the mic going over one of the long legs like you typically do with a tripod stand just for extra stability. But so far, this would be how I would typically set up a stand for an acoustic guitar. Feels super sturdy. I'm not worried about it. I also like the fact that unlike tripod stands, a lot of times when you bring a tripod stand in closer to an artist when they're playing guitar like this, their foot gets in the way of the tripod when you line up a heavier mic right over a leg. And so when you have that space, I'm actually finding that pretty convenient because I've had problems with artists kicking the stand or tapping it or something and ruining a take. So this is actually pretty convenient, and I think it's a nice feature as long as you're just kind of cognizant of the fact that, physics, just as long as you're not doing anything crazy, I think you're going to be fine positioning mics between the X's like this. And, there's a little bit of room back there on the smaller feet, the shorter legs, so you can always throw a sandbag back there if you're a little, nervous, but I feel good doing this, and this is a heavy mic. My mic's heavier than yours, I guarantee it. So our hypothetical scenario. Our acoustic guitar player's sitting in here playing, everything sounding good, and then he says, hey man, I know we talked about using ribbon mics to kind of make this sound old school, but I think I want to sound more like Ed Sheeran. I'm like, okay, so what do I do? Let's just throw another mic next to the ribbon. Let me find my pressure ball Omni mic and put it next to it. It's a little bit brighter. It'll add some brightness. And when you add in an Omni pattern to figure 8, it's going to shift that overall signal more towards cardioid. So let's give that a shot. All right, and another mic magically appears. So like I said, pressure Omni mic, it's a little bit brighter. And since this is Omni and the ribbon's in figure 8, when you start combining those signals together when they're both down the middle in mono, that overall signal, when you combine Omni and figure 8, starts to shift it into cardioid. So it's going to rein in the low end just a little bit in the proximity effect, and you're going to add some high end on top. So at that point, we put that up. Artist starts playing their decent song, and they're like, bro, I sound just like Ed Sheeran. This is great. Thanks, man. And, I reluctantly agree, but only on the grounds that the guy just happens to be a redhead. So He's got his hybrid, bright, moody Ed Sheeran sound that he has in his head, which honestly I have no idea what he means when he says he wants to sound like more like Ed Sheeran, but I just go with it. So he's playing, he's happy, he's like, cool, let's set up vocals. And I'm like, whoa, what do you mean set up vocals? He's like, man, I can't play to a click track and I can't sing and play guitar separately. I have to sing and play at the same time. Can we set up a vocal mic? And just like that, a mic magically appears. Picked a multi-pattern tube mic. It's my Vanguard V14. Amazing mic, but we're not here to talk about mics. But what I did do with this mic was I put it in figure 8 because figure 8 has a null similar to the ribbon. It kind of nulls out what's on top and bottom and on the sides. So I'm pointing the null towards his acoustic guitar to try to block out as much acoustic from the vocal mic as I can. That's why it's angled, and then I've kind of got it, maybe he's taller than me. Let's say he's a very tall version of Ed Sheeran. So he's about like that. He gets set up. He starts singing his, well, at this point, honestly, it's not a good song, but, got to make that dough. So he's sitting here playing. Of course, he's moving back and forth because this guy's just a pain in the butt, theoretically. He's sitting here playing. He's singing. He gets really close to the mic and then gets really far and drives me nuts. But, so far, so good. Everything's sounding great. Back to reality, I think we're pushing the boundaries of this little stand just a little bit, but honestly, it's feeling pretty sturdy considering I've done something pretty absurd. But like I said, just to be safe, we're gonna put a sandbag there just to be safe. Not a big deal, but this artist is already a little nuts and driving me crazy. So theoretically, I'm thinking he's probably going to fall over and try to knock over this mic stand. But there's crazy artist guitar scenario number 1. Everything sounds good to me. And then he comes in and listens to the song and he says, man, is there any way you can auto-tune just my vocals? And at that point, if I'm being completely honest, I would probably have to recommend a latch lake stand in this scenario because although this aluminum's really, really sturdy, and I'm sure when I hit him over the head with it and bury him out back, this would probably do the job, but I think the extra weight on the latch lake would probably do the job a little quicker. Yeah. Next up in our theoretical session, our artist from hell, our difficult artist, has moved to piano. I think he said he just wanted to do a couple of really simple, quarter notes or something. Just between us girls, I don't even think he can play piano, but neither here nor there. So I've set up on piano. I've done a really simple kind of close mic thing over the hammers. And as you've seen, I've set up the stereo bar that I was talking about before. I took off the joint from one of the shorter stands and put it onto the larger stand that I have here, and we've actually made a stereo bar and spread out the 2 Soyuz bomblets right over the hammers. And the bomblets are a darker mic, but they still have a lot of presence, and they do really good on percussive stuff. So if I'm going to get them up close and down low over the hammers, I thought that was a really good choice. So I've set up, the artist is sitting there playing, and he says, hey man, one of my favorite engineers in the world always puts a dynamic SM57 right inside of one of the sound holes, right on the side of the grand piano. Can we do that? And just like that, we have a dynamic SM57 right over one of the sound holes, like what's his face, who gives a crap, a multi-Grammy winning engineer, always mics his pianos apparently. So now that we've gotten that sorted and our quarter note piano part sounds a million times better, we are ready to get this part done and move on to more important stuff, right? Artist plays a few notes and he says, well, I think it's just lacking a little bit of presence. And at this point, it's like, oh God, here we go. Buzzwords. I don't know what that means. What do you mean, man? What do you think it needs? He's like, well, my cousin always records all of the preschool piano recitals at my son's school. And so he always says that pianos always need a room mic. Can we add a room mic? And at this point, we're all questioning our decisions and wondering how we've strayed so far from, our ideal recording studio. Yeah. And just like that, we magically have a room mic. And, if I'm being honest, I don't mind. It sounds different with the room mic, let's put it that way. And I love my Vanguard V44S. Any excuse to pull that out and do some room stuff. This is fine. Deep breath. The piano sounds so much better, doesn't it? Yeah. Well, now that we've got that squared away and we've tried to record our 10 seconds of little quarter note hits on one key, the artist decides that, you know what, bro, I have a MIDI patch that I'll just overdub at home. I like the MIDI piano a lot better. Now that we moved to drums, I think our dollar store version of Ed Sheeran's gone home. We're done with that. He's paid me to do drums, so no surprises. I get to set up drums, I get to do whatever I want. Now, back to reality, if this doesn't sell you on these stands, I don't know what will. I was able to do some pretty fun stuff with this. On the sidekick behind me, we have the right drummer's right side overhead. Then with one of the arms, I was able to get a condenser mic over the tom for close tom mic. On the solo, I've got the higher drummer's left side overhead. Then we've got what most people call like a crotch mic. We're going to distort this or over compress it and blend it in just as an overall kit mic. Got that coming off an arm. Then we've got a dynamic coming off one of the feet on the solo for the kick in. And then when we move over to the shorty, we've done some pretty crazy stuff. We've got 4 mics on the shorty. So let's work our way over. Let's start with the sidekick and move around and in with the shorty. Starting out on the right side of the kick, from the drummer's perspective, I was able to get the sidekick in to cover the right side overhead, as well as a close tom mic from one of the arms. Since I usually do lower overheads and I'm kind of doing a modified Glenn Johns here, the sidekick was able to get more than high enough for this side on the overhead. Then the arms just coming over with a condenser mic right over the tom for a close tom sound. I was able to cover 3 mics on the solo stand, so for the left side overhead, this one needed to be just a little higher than the sidekick. I probably could have gotten even higher with this one without any issues, but for any of you that usually do lower overheads like I do, I think 2 of the sidekicks are probably going to be more than enough for you. On the next longer arm, I was able to get what a lot of people call a crotch mic over the kit. This is usually a mic that you end up doing some parallel compression or some distortion on just to blend in to give the kit a little more energy. And then coming off one of the feet on the solo, I was able to get my inside kick mic with a dynamic. The shorty stand has ended up being the star of the show for me the last couple of days, and on the drum kit, it was no exception. I was able to get 4 mics on this crammed into a really small space. Starting out at the bottom, coming off one of the feet, I was able to take one of the shorter arms and come under for a snare bottom mic. The next thing I placed was I took the main arm on the shorty and I angled it through to get over for a close hi-hat mic. And then I was able to take 2 of the stub mounts and actually angle those in so I could get a close tom mic as well as a snare top. I think drums is a good place to stop and kind of wrap up. This is already getting to be a longer video. I just wanted to reiterate a few things. You saw me use this with my big RCA PB90 again. That thing's like 10 pounds. So if these stands are going to hold up and hold that for 3 days straight, then I feel safe putting anything else on any of these stands. I think there were some concerns about the larger bases of the stands getting in the way of things. I found it the opposite, especially starting to set up on tighter places like drums because they're not angled like tripod legs and they're flat. You're actually able to put more things around them and over them a lot easier. So mileage may vary for everyone, but I didn't think it was a problem and actually found that it was a lot more convenient to set up drums around a few of these than it was more traditional tripod legs. You saw what the Shorty did on this side of the drum set. That saved a lot of real estate and got things out of the way and was pretty easy to do. So that's great. I think, if this doesn't sell you on these stands, I don't know what will. But other than that, they are lightweight, which I think is a plus. I think there's still going to be concerns about, lightweight not being able to handle a lot of mics, especially when you get them higher up. But I have found so far that, again, that larger four leg bass kind of makes up for any of the lightness in the stands, and they have felt rock solid. So I'm really happy with these. I think they're awesome. I'm probably going to use them a lot more than some of my other stands that have more similar features and extra arms just because they're easier to set up and easier to move around. So I'm really happy with these. Again, there is just a little bit of a learning curve, but it's not a big deal. I think it's going to take you probably 2 or 3 days to adjust. That was what it took for me to kind of get used to these, get used to this two-stage locking system between screwing it down and tightening up on things. But once you get your head around everything, you can work with these really fast. They're really convenient. And, again, I like newer companies that are thinking outside of the box. So hope this was helpful. Check them out. Base4 Stands.